and thank you for joining us for the 2022 Senior Center Grant Information Session. This is really going to be a time where we're going to go over the grant proposal requests, kind of the application, and answer any questions you have about this new round of funding. My name is Sydney Shutro, and I wear many hats here at the Tennessee Commission on Aging and Disability, but today I'm going to put on my Senior Center Liaison hat, and I'm excited to be able to share some really good news about another round of funding for Senior Center grants across the state. Yay! Alrighty, so to get started, the application has a new look to it. So everyone who's on this call received the email with the information for this session, and you also received the request for proposal packet, and it looks like this. All of this information is also going to be available in an online form for the application. If you click that link, it's not going to be open right yet. Applications will open July 5th, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. So if you have the ability to pull up this request for proposal on your computer, or if you've printed it off, this presentation is really going to kind of follow along the proposal, so that way we're all kind of stay on track. So feel free to follow along, of course, on the screen and then also in your packet with the proposal if you'd like. So we're excited for the new round of funding. For those of you, many of you, all of you probably know, last year in 2021, the Tennessee General Assembly, I'm getting a little feedback, so I'm going to start muting people. I apologize for the delay. In 2021, the Tennessee General Assembly granted an allocation of $400,000 to the Tennessee Commission on Aging and Disability to give grants to senior centers across the state. We were able to fund 80 senior centers at $5,000 each grantee, and we are super excited to announce that we've gotten this funding again, but it's increased to $1 million. So we got a $600,000 increase for senior center grants. Yay! So if anyone is curious, or if you need the documentation of this allocation, it is bill number 2897, item 17 on page 11 of this little link down here. And kind of the quote, I'm not going to read that to you because we're all adults and I don't like to read slides. These are wordy slides. But the $1 million is for the purpose of making grants on a competitive basis. And we're going to talk more about what that competitive basis means in more detail here in a little bit. But just in case anyone needs kind of to cite that source, you can click, and I'm going to send all of this information out to everyone in a follow-up email as well. So you have this presentation and this information as well. Just in case you need that documentation. And also, I really want to emphasize this is non-recurring funding. And what non-recurring funding means is this is not guaranteed year after year. So we're really excited that we were able to get additional funding in 2022, not guaranteed for 2023. So we're going to be excited for the funding as we have it, and we're going to keep advocating to continue this type of funding in the future. So fingers crossed, things are looking good. A little bit of background on the grant. So we are going to be distributing 125 $8,000 grants to senior centers this year. This is a huge increase from what we were able to do last year. And what I mean by that is last year we were able to fund 80 senior centers, and this year we're going to be able to fund 45 additional senior centers. So 125 total. We're also going to be able to increase the grant amounts from $5,000 to $8,000. So all good news all around. All senior centers across the state are eligible to apply for this grant. So that means state-funded senior centers and non-state funded senior centers. So everyone is eligible to apply for this funding. There is about 197 senior centers across the state, and we're giving out those 125 grants. So that's how we're going to keep it competitive per the legislation that was passed. Applications are going to be available online. We saw the link a little while ago, and you'll see that link again throughout the presentation, and also in the paper form, which we showed a little bit earlier. It's all kind of put into one packet instead of multiple attachments like we had last year. So you are definitely willing to fill out that electronic form or fill out the paper form and email it to me. I am going to be the main contact for the Senior Center grants. So any questions, any documentation you want to submit, please send it all to me. It can also be done via fax, electronically, through the online form, or scanned via email are going to be the best options to make sure that we receive your application. We've seen many issues with the mail. In fact, we had one center who mailed it and it never got here last year. So to make sure that we receive your application, please consider mail as your very absolute last resort. And I'm going, if you email me and ask me if you can mail it in, I'm going to strongly discourage it, but it's an option, just not a preferable option. That was a really long tangent I just went on. Sorry about that. So last year, again, we gave out 80 grants and we had 130 applications, which was amazing. Of course, that meant that 50 senior centers didn't get funded, which wasn't ideal, but we're able to increase the number of centers that we're going to be able to fund. So here's kind of a map of all of Tennessee and where we received applications from. Those were the 130 complete applications. We also received 11 applications that were incomplete or they were missing some required item. So that's why we are very confident that we're going to be able to get at least the 125 centers to apply for the funding and be able to spread the money to additional centers and hopefully additional counties across the state. So please, please, please apply. A couple new things that we added. So we have a lot of lessons learned. Last year was our first year doing this. So, you learn things along the way. Sorry if I hesitate, it's because I hear background noise and I want to make sure that everyone can hear everything. So there's a couple things that we added as recommendations, but they're highly recommended. Not a requirement for you to do either of these things, but if you want to get your funding faster, if you are awarded a grant, these are some steps you might want to consider taking. The first one is becoming a supplier with the state of Tennessee. Many of our state-funded senior centers possibly already are suppliers, so this might be more toward our non-state funded side. But there is a link and information in your proposal to kind of help you walk through the steps about being a supplier for the state of Tennessee. So that way you're already in the system and our amazing fiscal department can more easily get your information to our central procurement office that cuts the checks and gets you your money faster. We also have a couple fiscal people from our agency who are on the call now. So after I talk about this direct deposit, I'll turn it over to them if they have any additional comments. But that's kind of the supplier side of things. And then the one really big lesson I think that we learned was if you're able to set up direct deposit, you're going to be able to get your funding faster and definitely more of a guarantee the funding is going to come with less stress. We did have some centers last year that we had to mail checks to, and then the checks didn't come, and it was kind of a crazy thing. So if you can, again, all of this is optional. You don't have to do this, but it's extremely highly recommended to make the process easier for everyone. Is to set up direct deposit with the state. So if you are awarded a grant, it's going to go into your account right there for you to spend as quickly as you receive it. I know we have Gail and we have Wayne, and Wayne has been amazing in helping. He can tell a lot of stories, I'm sure. But Gail or Wayne, do you have anything that you want to add in terms of the supplier and direct deposit? You all know a lot more detail about this than I do.
Yeah, a lot of people that are registered with the state and have not used the activity very much, you may want to ensure that you have a correct address on file. We had a few people that had inactive addresses, and when went to cut a check, that wouldn't cut a check because of the address being inactive. Make sure your address is correct. Your mailing address is on there. We had one that it went to the center and the center doesn't get mail. And that person, the check went back and then they got marked inactive. So as we'd said before, direct deposit is the best way. We had a few people that the checks were mailed to the correct address and the mail just didn't get there. And it takes, it was taking close to a month and a half, 2 months to get a new check cut. It's quite an ordeal. So if in the direct deposit form, I've never completed it, but we did have one person while they were waiting on getting a check redeposited that did the direct deposit form, and I think it's a third party that actually does it, so it actually works very smoothly. So, but the supplier, getting set up as a supplier takes a long time. So if you are going to apply for it, it's free to do. I would suggest go ahead and uh, reach out to that link and start the process of becoming a supplier. That's all I have.
Thank you, Wayne. And in your the proposal, Wayne's email address is in there. He is a great resource. He's helped me more times than I can count when it comes to last year's grant. So please feel free to contact me. Like I said earlier, I'll be your main contact for the Senior Center grant. If you have questions about not receiving your funds, if you're a grantee, feel free to copy me and Wayne, and we'll work together to make sure that issue is resolved. I also forgot to mention at the beginning, if you have any questions as we're going through, please feel free to type those into the chat box so that way I can kind of answer them as they come in, or you can save all your questions till the end, whatever you prefer. Okay, eligibility. So we are encouraging funds to be used in support of things like capital projects, outreach and education, programming activities, and routine operating expenses. We've had such great success with the grants last year. So for example, capital projects, people got new floors, new roofs, fixed bathrooms, new awnings, stoves, refrigerators, a lot of really, really great things have come out of the capital project side of using this fund. And if anyone wants to chat in the chat box about what they were able to use the funds for and how it helped, please feel free to do that. Outreach and education, we had a center kind of update all of their marketing materials to go out to the community so they're able to help increase participation at the center. Programming activities, we had new exercise equipment, new programming, they got to go out of the senior center for bowling trips and museum visits and all sorts of things. And then routine operating expenses, kind of think of that as, lights, heat, air, phone, things that you need to use funding for every month to make sure the center can run. So that's what you are encouraged to use funding for. Generally speaking, all the ideas that we've heard that have come through fit into one of these 4 categories. If not, please let me know and I will work with our upper management to get permission for those funds to be used on maybe an idea that doesn't fit one of those categories. Funding cannot be used to support either of these things under any circumstance. So funding cannot support bingo and it cannot support the purchase of gift cards. Those are the 2 big no-nos in terms of when you're writing your proposal. If we see information about bingo or purchasing of gift cards, I will likely send it back to you to resubmit and take that information out. So those are the 2 things that are a definite no. Oh, and in the chat box, we have some information from a center who received funding. So feel free to use that as an example. All right, application timeline. So here's kind of how this grant cycle is going to work. So last Monday, everyone received the request for proposals and were able to review it and kind of see the different requirements of the grant cycle this year. today we're having our information session. Again, thank you all so much for attending. July 5th is going to be the start date to when applications can be submitted. So you can start, and I strongly, strongly encourage you all to start the process of getting your proposals ready. And that includes figuring out what you want to spend your money on, starting to get those letters of support that we're going to talk about. So getting your application ready to submit, but we are not accepting any applications before July 5th. I just got an email with an application yesterday, and I had to say, resubmit on July 5th. That's when we're starting to receive those applications. I'm not going to save your application. I'm going to ask you to resubmit it. So please don't submit before July 5th, which is a Tuesday after the July 4th holiday. Applications are due. The deadline to submit your applications is going to be August 5th. That is a Friday. So you've had a couple weeks to kind of plan before the application opens, and then you have a month to submit your application once the application has opened. And then our anticipated date of notice of award. So this means we're going to notify the senior centers that they are a grant recipient, and that date is going to be August 15th. So we're going to have about a week to go through all of our scoring and make sure all the applications are in place, and then notify those senior centers who are award recipients. If you are an award recipient or a grantee, here's your timeline once you've received those funds. So between August 15th, the date of the notice of award, and September 30th, this year we have to have contracts with all of our senior centers. So I'm working with our legal team. They're going to have the contracts kind of set up, and then I will send it to the senior centers for signature. We must have this contract signed before we can issue your funding. So that's going to be kind of the caveat. If you aren't able to sign that contract in a timely fashion, that's going to delay you potentially getting your funds. It's not going to say you're not going to get your funds, but it's just saying we have to have that contract in place before we can distribute those funds. So there was a question that came in about what type of entity do you mark? I'm going to get to that question here in a little bit. I'm not ignoring you. I promise I will get to that. By October 31st, Halloween, happy Halloween. All of the funds are going to be distributed to grantees. Again, that is dependent on making sure that you sign that contract. But that's going to be kind of our absolute last day is October 31st to get everyone their funding. If you are a grantee during this timeline and you have not received your funding, you've signed the contract, you've done everything you need to do, and you have not received your funding by October 31st, please let me know as quickly as possible. We don't want to have any delays. We want to get you your funding so you can spend and achieve the goals that you put forth in your proposal. So please, please, please let us know. We want to make sure that we get you those funds. March 31st of next year, we're going to have a midterm report. We called these check-ins last year, but we're going to put together a more formal process. So if you get a grant, March 31st, we're going to do a check-in, or it's really going to be a midterm report. We're going to give you a template this year. Still working on developing that template, but we're going to ask for kind of an update on your grant. And I'll get into more detail on what all these specifics are as well. You have a deadline of September 30th, 2023 to spend your $8,000 in grant funds.
Yeah, they all here now.
Sorry, we're getting some background noise. I'm going to mute that person.
All right.
Sorry about that. It was a little bit harder to find who was talking than I thought. So yeah, September 30th, 2023, all of your funds must be expended for this $8,000 grant. And then we'll have a final report that's due October 31st that will show how all of your funding was spent. And again, I'm going to talk more about the details of the reports here in a little bit. So there was your timeline for the application, and here's the timeline if you are one of the 125 senior centers to get that $8,000 grant award. Questions about the timeline or the application process, again, please feel free to put all your questions in the chat box. so that way I can kind of address them as we go. And I am going to address the question that's in the chat box now, just in a minute. This is a great segue into the question that's in the chat box. So here is the application. Again, you're going to be able to do this electronically online, but you can also use this paper format. So the name of your center, everyone should know the name of that. All right, type of entity, how the senior center is registered through the Secretary of State. So we do have a question that it's kind of both. Senior Center is a nonprofit. We raise our own funds. Do I mark county government or nonprofit? So what I would recommend you do is you look yourself up on the Tennessee Secretary of State's website and see what they have you listed as. So if they have you listed as a nonprofit, you would mark your entity as a nonprofit. If they have you listed as county or city government, then you would mark those. So make sure you check with the Secretary of State and see what they have you listed as, and that's what you would go with. You're going to have your senior center address. If you have a physical address and a different mailing address, I didn't take that into consideration and I should have. I might have to update the application on that, but put both on there. If it's a different one, I know some people have PO boxes and not physical addresses. So I might have to look at redoing that one. And then the county your senior center is located in. You may serve multiple counties, but we need the county that the center is located in. And then we have a senior center contact. So I apologize, this is very small on the screen. So again, if you have the proposal, maybe you've put it on your screen or you were able to print it off. You could see this bigger. But the senior center contact, this is, I really want to make this very clear. The person that's listed as the senior center contact is going to be the primary person that I'm going to send all grant correspondence to. So we've had some, and things happen. I definitely know that, you know, congratulations, you won the lottery and now you've, you know, resigned from your position and maybe there wasn't as much time for a transition and a new director's come in and they don't know that they got a grant or something along those lines. But if there is, for whatever reason, a difference in the primary contact for this grant, I need to know as soon as possible or else some information might be miscommunicated and we don't want anyone to miss anything. Something new for the application this year than last year, because we have to have those contracts. The contracts are new. We didn't have that in 2021. We need an authorized signatory on the application. So this is the person who is authorized to sign contracts on behalf of the center. So it could be the same as the primary contact. It might be someone different than the primary contact. But we need to make sure we know who the person is at the center who can sign that contract. So we have very similar information to the primary contact there. And then you would mark which of the grant goals you're going to focus on. You can focus on more than one grant goal. So you can do capital projects and activities. You can mark all 4 if you want to. And then from the goals, you would write a short project narrative. We say about 500 words. So by no means do we want, you know, a 12-page narrative or something along those lines. We do want you to be detailed, but we don't need, you know, we're not federal funds who want, you know, a huge long narrative. So about 500 words we think is about enough for the narrative. Just like last year, we are requiring centers to get a letter of support from their state representative and their state senator. And I'm going to talk about how you can find those individuals. And I'm really going to reiterate, please do not try and reach out to anyone who works in DC. We are sticking to Tennessee, our Tennessee state representative and our Tennessee state legislatures. Also, we need to include the organization's W-9 form, and I'm going to talk in great detail about the W-9 form because there's some important things that we need to note on that. And another new part of the application this year is we have an agreement or an application certification that I don't think anyone's going to have an issue signing that says whoever is doing the application, understand if awarded a senior center grant, all funds received from this grant must be used for the improvement and benefit of the above mentioned senior center and must be expended by September 30th, 2023. So as long as you agree to that, you're good to go. questions on applications. And again, please feel free to type anything in the chat box. We have also updated our scoring for the grant. So last year we had one main category for scoring. This year we have 4. So scoring for the grants are going to be based on 4 different criteria. The first one is the same as last year. So we are going to look at those targeted areas based on the Department of Economic and Community Development, the distressed, at-risk, transitional, competitive, and attainment counties. In your packet, in your proposal, toward the back is Appendix A through D. So Appendix A is going to list out all 95 counties and how many points you would get for this category. So that's a good reference point if you're looking to see kind of what your score is going to be when you apply. All of that is going to be in your appendix. So Appendix A is going to be those targeted areas to see, is my county distressed? You can look back there, see how many points you're going to get. A new category that we're adding this year is low-income population. And this is based on the Medicare low-income population from the Tennessee SHIP program, or the Tennessee State Health Assistance Program. Good question came in the chat box. So do we need to put how much will be spent for each item in the narrative? No, we don't need a budget. So we're going to give you the 8,000. You're going to say we're going to spend it on these 10 items and you're good to go. We don't need to know kind of a breakdown of the cost. Good question. So based on the low-income populations, what we did is our top 31 counties across the state that have the highest population of low-income individuals are going to receive 3 points, the middle 32, 2 points, the bottom 32, 1 point. And again, that's going to be in your appendix, and it's Appendix B as in boy. And that's kind of just a one-pager right there. And I did my best, and I hope I did this correctly, to put all of the counties in alphabetical order. So that way, if you're a county that starts with an H, you don't have to really hunt for your county. You should hopefully be able to find it a bit easier in those scoring sections. Fingers crossed, hope. The next new category for scoring we have is estimated 65 plus population in 2022. And this is based on the Tennessee Department of Health. And you can have the link there. We looked at pages 5 through 6, so you do have our resources for how we put the scoring together. So if the estimated population of 65 and older individuals in your county is 30% or above, you'll get 3 points. If it's between 20 and 29.9%, you'll get 2 points. Between 10% and 19.9%, you'll get 1 point. And again, all of that is detailed in your appendix, and the estimated population for 2022 is Appendix C as in cat. The appendix is something we didn't have last year, so I'm hoping that this will kind of help everybody in terms of checking out their scores. And then, as I mentioned a little bit ago, the letters of support, not only are they required for the application submission to be a complete application, but they also do have point values. So you will get an automatic 2 points because it is a requirement of the grant to be complete to get funding. So speaking of those letters of support, if you have any questions on scoring, okay, we had a question come in. Can an entity submit applications for multiple senior centers? So a senior center can only receive 1 grant. So if you are a county that has maybe 4 or 5 senior centers under you, you would have to do 5 individual applications and say it's for these 5 individual senior centers. We're not going to give one entity more than $8,000. So it would have to be individual applications for each senior center to be eligible for a grant. Perfect. All right, letters of support. So just like last year, we've put a template together for you. So it's very simple. You can be as detailed as you want. So basically, we kind of have the template for you. You would insert your senior center name. A couple times you would put in a brief project description, probably not all 500 words, but something a little bit less so the elected official knows what you're planning to spend the money on, and submit that into your application. So Curious to know how many senior centers in the state are completely nonprofit like mine. They are not under a city or county umbrella. That's a great question. So how many senior centers are nonprofit, county, state funded? We're looking at probably, I honestly, I couldn't probably guess. It's a mixture. Competitive county, which hurts our chances. So the reason why we added the total population and the low income population is to actually help those counties who are not distressed increase their score and make it a bit more competitive. So even if you're a competitive or an attainment county, please, please, please apply. Like I mentioned before, we had 130 applications in 2021, and we're able to do 125 grants this year. So there's a lot better chance for almost anybody or a larger majority of our senior centers who apply to get funding. Please don't be discouraged from applying for this funding. We want everyone to apply. We can't guarantee you're going to get funding, but if you don't apply, you're definitely not going to get it. So please, 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 everyone apply. I also want to, and I'm hoping that my computer is going to have some quick internet speed here. There is a website where you can type in your senior center address, and it's going to tell you who your state representative and who your state senator is. So we're going to do my office, Dederick Street in Nashville, 37243. So if I was a senior center, obviously I'm not, but if I was, I type in my address, and the letters of support I'm going to send to Representative Bill Beck, and I'm going to send to Senator Brenda Gilmore. I'm not going to send it to Marsha Blackburn, and I'm not going to send it to Bill Haggerty. Those are our DC representatives. We are staying in the state of Tennessee. So this is where you're going to be able to find out who your legislatures are, in the Tennessee General Assembly. Where on the Tennessee Secretary of State do we find the type of entity? I tried to search engine. I'll have to do a little bit of research on that, and then I will get that out to everyone. Or I'm not sure, Wayne, if you're still on, if you know where people can look themselves up, if you don't mind doing that research for me, we can put that in the chat box.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Does the letter of support have to have a brief project description, or can it be generic? It's up to you and how you want to get that to your representative or senator. It's good to at least let them know how you want to spend the funding, whether it's just those generic basic goals like the capital projects, programs, and activities. So it can vary how you want the letter to be written. More detail, the better in my mind, but it's totally up to you. Even if we're not distressed as bad as some counties, it doesn't mean we get funding through our county legislative body. This hurts some senior centers. We're hoping that how we've done scoring this year is going to help more senior centers than hurt senior centers. So fingers crossed there. Several questions. Okay, when or where do we find and sign the contract? So between August 15th and September 30th, our legal team, we're going to put the contracts together. I am going to email the contract to whoever the authorized signatory is. And once we get that signature, we're going to issue those funds. So we're hoping it's going to be before September 30th, but that's kind of our cutoff day to where I'm going to be calling and emailing and saying, hey, where's your contract? Where do I update our direct deposit form? There is a link and information in the proposal that you can look at for the deposit form and the instructions. And if that doesn't have the information, shoot me an email and I can see if I can do some additional research for you. Go to the Secretary of State website, type the control number found on the annual report, and it'll give you the control number. I think that's to answer the previous question for the Secretary of State, which Wayne's looking up for us as well. Great questions, keep them coming. But again, when it comes to your letters of support, this is who you're going, or the site you're going to look at to determine who you're going to send those letters to. Please keep it to the Tennessee General Assembly and do not go to anyone who's up in DC. We had a few senators who were confused about that last year. Also, we have 2 legislative liaisons here at the Commission on Aging and Disability who are happy to help anyone who may not be getting a lot of communication back from their legislatures. So please, please, please do me a favor. Do not wait until August 1st to send your letter of support to your elected official. You need to do it sooner, way, way sooner than later. Oh, also, this letter should be written and signed on the letterhead of the senator and representative, so that needs to be taken into consideration as well. So I strongly encourage, again, we can't require anything, but it is best practice if you all know, generally speaking, what you want to spend this money on. You can, type up your 500 words a little bit later, but get your draft of your letter of support to your representatives and senators ready, and then send it, I would say, no later than the end of next week. And that will give your elected officials a few weeks to be able to look at it, sign it, and get it back to you. Like we said earlier, some representatives are a bit more responsive than others. If you don't hear back within a week of sending your letter, let me know, and I will work with our legislative liaisons to help you out. If you wait until the week or the day before the application or the day the application is due, we cannot help you with the letters of support. Please, please, please do not wait until the last minute to start these letters of support. Applications start July 5th, but you are more than welcome to start preparing and getting these letters well before the July 5th opening of the applications. So if you are going to try and figure out your priority of how you want to do this application, the letters of support should be kind of priority number 1 to get that out for our elected officials to sign for you. Sorry, that was very preachy, but I want to make sure everyone can get this. Okay, W-9 form. This was another lesson learned. The state of Tennessee is extremely particular on how you fill out a W-9 form. So some of the fun things that we learned last year, and when I say we, I mean me and Wayne went back and forth on this one. And Wayne did put in the chat box where you can search on how your business is filed. So thank you, Wayne. I'll be sure to send that out in the follow-up email as well. So on your W-9 form, section 1, so number 1 up here at the top, make sure this is the identical name that your senior center is linked to for your IEN or your employer identification number and the IRS. So we call ourselves many names. Make sure whatever name you put on your W-9 is the name that is registered with the IRS. We've had to send some W-9s back, and I don't want to have to do that this year if we can avoid it. Section 3, this goes back to some of the questions that are in the chat box. So we might have some for-profit centers. I'm not sure if we have any, but if we do have a for-profit center, in section 3, you can see there's a bunch of these boxes. And again, this is probably very small on your screen. So if you have your proposal open, you can see it a bit bigger. Approximately how many senior centers are in the state? By our calculation, there's 197. Last year, we got 130 complete applications and 11 incomplete applications. So 141 centers were interested in funding last year. And we have 125 grants to distribute this year. So apply, apply, apply. So if you're a for-profit center, again, I'm not sure if we have any of those, but if we do, then you can indicate, a corporation in section 3. If you are a nonprofit or city or county government, again, that goes back to the entity that you mark off at the beginning of your application. Please mark other down here at the bottom. Hopefully you can see my cursor. And indicate nonprofit, 501c3, or government. That's how you're going to fill out your W-9. Also on part 2, I got a question already before the session. Can't I just submit the same W-9 that we sent in last year for our application? No, you have to submit a new one because the date down here at the bottom. So this is another thing that we got some W-9s that this part wasn't completed, but you do have to sign and you do have to date the W-9. and the date of your W-9 has to be listed in the calendar year of 2022. My apologies if you've already answered this question. Is it a requirement for the letters of support to come from state representative and senator? Yes, that is a requirement. It has to be from those two individuals. Okay. And the last thing that we noticed a lot of, please do not make any other marks on your W-9. And I put that in bold and all caps. I don't mean to yell it at you. But we did have some W-9s come in where maybe there was some whiteout, or you kind of scribbled out the corporation and marked other or something along those lines, or you had little marks over somewhere that you accidentally did. Please do not have any other marks on your W-9, or I will have to send it back to you to redo. And I've had to do this many times last year, and I'm sure people got very annoyed with me. So I apologize, because I am going to be that nuisance of a person. But if there are any additional markings on there, it will be denied from the state and we will have to resubmit. So these are the main things that we saw last year when we were collecting W-9s that we had to ask centers to resubmit. So again, make sure your name is the same as it's listed with the IRS. Only mark corporation if you are a for-profit. If you are a nonprofit, city or county government, please indicate other and then list nonprofit or government. Got to fill this out and make sure that it's dated for 2022 and don't mark anything else. I will do my best to review all of these and make sure everything is hunky-dory so we don't have to go back and forth. Again, I'll do my best.
Sydney,
Yes.
I want to make one note on the address. Is you need to have your mailing address on there, because that is what, if you've never received anything from the state, they're going to go and put that address in there. And if it's a physical address that you do not receive mail, the check would go there. So, but you just need to put your mailing address in there.
Great
And
point. Thank you, Wayne.
Yeah, you cannot put two addresses in there. You can't put your street number and then PO box. It has only one address is allowed. We've had those errors, and unfortunately the people who process these are very, very picky.
Thank you. Wayne did mention that to me earlier and I forgot to add it to the presentation. See, that's why I'm glad I have backup support of the experts who know what they're talking about. We also had a question come in. How do I find out who authorized signatories are? It's a great question. If you are with city or county government, you would ask kind of who your the management is up there, who you would communicate with. If you're a nonprofit and you're the senior center director, you might want to ask the board. It kind of depends on your organization and who's authorized to sign contracts. So if you're the senior center director and you've signed contracts for other programs before, then you would likely be the authorized signatory. For organizations that will be submitting for multiple centers, will it be a problem to submit the same W-9 for all center applications submitted by the organization? Wayne, help me out with this one.
That is not a problem. Just have whatever the main organization is, you have that one W-9. You do not have to change the name on it, because when they're a supplier, if you want, it will go all into one account and you can distribute it. If you want it separate accounts, then we'll have to get together and with vendor maintenance, and you'll have to have a different address for each one of the centers, which can happen. But if that's what you want to do, then that's something special and you want to get with me way ahead of time.
Thank you. That's why Wayne is listed in the proposal this year. Okay, we normally choose C corporation. We are a 501c3. I just wanted to be certain, are we to choose other and write in nonprofit? Yes, please do that if you are a nonprofit.
You write other than 501c3 nonprofit.
Excellent. All righty, moving right along. So we talked about midterm and final reports. This is we called them check-ins last year. We're making it a more formalized process this year. It's going to be very similar in format. So the first thing is about a 2 to 3 paragraph narrative of how you've spent the money thus far. So again, reporting is going to be March 31st and October 31st for a midterm and then the final. Your midterm report, you do not have to spend all of your funding. That's just kind of a status update, making sure everything's looking good and you're confident that all those funds will be able to be expended by September 30th. So in your reports, we're just going to kind of ask for a little narrative. How are things going? What'd you spend the money on? Things of that nature. We're also going to want to know the number of people served. So this could be, let's say, for example, you're doing routine operating expenses. So it's helping you pay the electric bill. Well, that's going to benefit every participant that you have at the center. So in terms of people served, you would say your participant count at the center. If you're doing programs, then you would say, the number of people who attended those programs. So we want to get a feel for how many people are being served with these funds. We also want pictures. So what we're going to be doing is putting together a report. We're going to present it to the Tennessee General Assembly, to our commission, and pictures are really going to help illustrate all of the amazing things that you all are going to be able to do with this funding. We just did the midterm report for the 2021 grant series, and it's looking really, really good. I'm really excited to be able to share it, just working on compiling everything. But pictures, what they say, pictures say 1,000 words. Pictures are awesome with smiling faces and all sorts of good stuff. We are going to also need receipts. So we know the $8,000 was spent and what it was spent on to make sure, it wasn't spent toward things that aren't allowed for the grant. So keep those receipts. I know you all do that anyway, just as a best practice. So keep those receipts. What if you share your building with other office, such as you count them as well? You would just count the participants. I hope you're talking about people served. If you're talking about something else, please let me know. But you would only count the people served for the center, who are participants at the center, not necessarily who are participants of another organization. I would say to keep it to the center focused. And the last thing, this is optional, but it's really good, and we've gotten some really good quotes from this. Our testimonials from participants at the center on how what you were able to purchase through the grant has affected them as a participant of the center. So we had exercise equipment, and we had testimonials of how great that was, and trips outside of the center, and all sorts of really great testimonials. So those are really impactful as we're looking to, again, advocate and work with the Tennessee General Assembly to keep this additional funding going. So the more information we can get, the better. So that's kind of how our reporting is going to go. And that's really the proposal in a nutshell. So a couple key takeaways that if you kind of zoned out or missed a couple things, here's the big highlights that I want to remind you all about. Again, this is not recurring funds, so it's not guaranteed that we're going to get this money year after year. It is also a competitive grant. So we want all senior centers to apply for this. Your chances are higher than they were last year. Last year, we were only able to fund 80 senior centers. So now we're able to do 125. So please, please, please apply. Can't guarantee you're going to be a grant recipient, but if you don't apply, you're definitely not going to get $8,000, right? The scoring, again, we updated that. That was definitely some feedback that we received last year on our scoring system and how it could be better. So we took that feedback and we updated it to those 4 different scoring points for the distressed counties, the low-income population, the estimated population for 65 and older, and then those letters of support. And again, in Appendix A through C, you'll be able to look for your county and see what your total score could be, or most likely will be, when you submit that complete application. And the only way that you can be considered for funding is if you submit a complete application, meaning you have to have everything, turn in your W-9, get your letters of support, everything on that list has to be submitted, or else you will not be eligible for funding. Everything we just talked about, W-9s, just kind of make sure you go off of all of that and no additional markings. And it's pretty fresh on your mind. We just talked about that, but all those details of the W-9 are very important to keep in mind as well. And then lastly, what we just talked about with reports, if you are a grant recipient, you'll be able to mark those dates in your calendar, March 31st, October 31st. Those are when your reports are going to be due. And then are my final reminders, and then we'll open it up for questions even more. Get your application ready now. Please do not wait until July 5th. Start getting those letters of support typed out, get them sent over via email. I wouldn't mail them to your elected officials. I would send them via email. Their emails are listed on the website that we looked at. But get all your stuff ready now, so that way when applications open on July 5th, you'll be able to submit it right away. And then you just kind of have to wait until August 15th when we put those notice of awards out. But please do not submit an application before July 5th. I will tell you that we're not keeping them on file and remind you to submit everything again on July 5th. And then the deadline for applications is August 5th. So you have 30 days that the application will be open to submit your application. And then August 15th is our anticipated date of when we will notify everyone who is an award recipient. With that, I will open it up for questions. We had some great questions come in through the chat box. You're welcome to unmute yourself and verbally ask a question if you'd like. And I'll put my contact information up here. It's also listed there in the request for proposals. I only put my email address on the request for proposals. That's going to be the easiest and fastest way to get a hold of me. I'm one of those crazy people who love a paper trail. So if we have a conversation, I may not remember all of the details of the conversation. I will try my best to do a follow-up. But if you send me an email, then we'll definitely have that documentation of our conversation. So anyone have any questions, comments?
Sydney?
Yes.
This is Alice Kirby up in Fentress County. I do have a question about the W-9.
Sure.
Filled out the senior center's name, marked other because we are under county government and we're nonprofit. When I've had to do these in the past, the finance director fills in our identification number because the county has an ID number, and then he has signed this in the past. Is that acceptable?
Yes, that is acceptable.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Sydney, and I did want to clarify, we mark other on that W-9, correct?
Correct. For a nonprofit, city or county government, you mark other.
Thank you.
Any other
Hey,
questions?
Sid.
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, it's Fran from Smyrna.
Hey,
Can
Fran.
you do a little research and find out how many senior centers are completely nonprofit like that?
So we've definitely tried to do that. It's harder than what it sounds. And we actually have a lot of feedback. I thought that was going to be somebody who's asking a question. Hold on a second. That person. Not trying to be rude, but muted that person so Frank could hear. So we're hoping I'll have a better idea, honestly, August 5th. Once we start getting these applications and people indicate that, we'll have a better idea of how they identify. So I would venture to say we have as close to 50-50 as we can get, but we will have more concrete research once we get the proposals from everybody.
Thank you. I'm just curious.
Yeah, so are we.
Sydney, this
Yes.
is Alice Kirby again. I have a question just for clarification. We have pulled up online just to see for sure what the Secretary of State had us listed as under entity, and and this may be simple but we're going to ask for clarity. Under entity, it has NCORP. Can you all clarify what that exactly mean?
Yeah, NCORP, and Wayne, if you're on, you might correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's nonprofit corporation.
Okay. We just wanted to make sure, because, you know, it is abbreviated, but that's what we thought it meant.
Wayne, is that right?
Yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah, I believe that is correct.
Okay, so we're good. When we send this W-9 in, others gonna match up with what the Secretary of State shows.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, any other questions? We have someone who's raised their hand. Beth, go for it.
Yeah, but I'm probably going to be answering
You're a bit distanced, Beth. We're not able to hear you very well, so I'm not sure if you're on a speakerphone, which you'll have to get a little bit closer for me.
I'll be just a second. I wanted to see if anything, can any funds be used toward salary?
For core salary, so that question has come up, and we're working on figuring out with our legal team and if that's going to be an allowable expense. So we haven't confirmed that yet. So I will get back to everyone on that. I would use caution if you want to go that route, because this is non-recurring funding.
Right.
So if you wanted to use that for salary, and again, I don't know if it's confirmed yet. We're going to have a meeting for all of that. But it wouldn't be something that you could guarantee year to year. So I would use caution if that's something that you want to use it for.
Yeah, okay. All right, but you'll let us know about that?
Yes, we have quite a few people out this week, but I'm hoping I can get a meeting with our director and some other people who are working on the grant to get a kind of final answer for that by early next week. But yeah, I'll give a follow-up to everybody on that.
Thank you.
No problem. Sue, it looks like you have your...
Yes, the other grant it's kind of like time sensitive. The senior centers were more likely to receive the grant if the application was sent in quicker than some others. Is this one that way, or are we all equal as long as we get it in before the deadline?
Great question. So awardees are going to be based on scoring. So that's how we was last year. We had more limited centers that we were able to fund. But it is going to be, if you are a tie score, and everyone's going to be equal in that regards in terms of scores, if you all have the same score, it will come down to who we got an application from first, if there is a tie score, to determine who gets the grant. So if we have 100, if we have 130 applications and there's 125 grants and there's tie scores, the 5 that submitted later could possibly be at risk of not receiving funds. So yes, it will be very similar to last year.
Okay, thanks.
Sydney, it's me again. I looked back through my notes, and I do have one question where you spoke about the person authorized to sign a contract, and that are you meaning that this grant is going to come in a contract form? Is that I just need clarification on that. You said we had to have a grant or a contract with you all.
Yes, so this is different than last year. So there is going to have to be a contract on file. Once we have that contract, we'll be able to issue those funds.
Okay, so are you all going to send that out for us to get back to you?
Yes, so between August 15th, when the notice of award goes out, and no later than September 30th, we're going to have it way sooner than that. But between that timeline, I'm going to have the contract from our legal department. I'm going to send it to, let's say, for example, you're awarded a grant and you're the primary contact and the authorized signatory. I'm going to send it to you to sign. You're going to send it back to me. I'm going to tell our fiscal department, hey, she's good to go. Send her money. And then they're going to get you your money no later than October 31st.
Okay.
We're hoping well
before
before that.
I understand that. I just wanted to clarify on that. All right. Thank you.
No problem. Sorry, I go into long explanations. We had a question come in here. Does the capital improvements have to be to the building or can it be to the grounds of our property? It can be on the grounds. We had a senior center who redid their draining outside for when it rains and things of that nature. We have gazebos going up and outdoor seating. So yeah, it can be outside for sure. I know we still have a couple people with hands up, but I think we asked Beth and Sue, are you guys good?
Yes, I'm good.
Okay, perfect. It is 11:01. I kind of planned this for an hour. So real quick, I just want to thank everyone again for attending the session. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, but if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to stick around and answer those one-on-one. So thank you all so much again.